After sleeping with her boss, the woman invited his wife to a coffee shop. Pretending to be the victim, she angrily denounced her husband as a rapist, leaving the wife confused and bewildered. Lisa thought her life was happy, until one day her husband asked for a divorce. She initially thought he was drunk and joking. It was only when he said "I'm sorry" that she realized he was serious. Lisa demanded to know if he was having an affair. His expression said it all. Lisa went to the kitchen, drinking water to suppress her rage. She told her husband she would never agree to a divorce. He grabbed her arm, saying he had been thinking about this for a long time. Lisa refused to listen to any explanation. Pete went back to the bedroom and started packing. Lisa rushed in, demanding to know why he was hurting her like this. She had devoted herself to taking care of their family, and this was what she got in return. The heartless man had already changed his feelings. No amount of pleading would help. Ignoring his wife's desperate appeals, Pete resolutely walked out the door with his luggage. The next day, Lisa went to her husband's office building and told him she had thought it through. Living with someone who didn't love her was meaningless. Divorce was probably the best choice. A delighted Pete immediately went to Rosie and shared the good news, asking for the $1 billion he had previously entrusted to her. To his surprise, Rosie had changed her mind. She had already spent the money. Panic set in. This money was meant to cover the alimony for his divorce. Rosie suggested he simply not get divorced. Pete couldn't believe what he was hearing. Rosie asked him if he didn't know that using a borrowed name account was illegal. Pete retorted that she was the one who told him to do it. Rosie just thought the man was foolish. Pete grabbed Rosie as she tried to leave, demanding to know why she was doing this. Rosie brushed his hand away, stating that the money was in her name, so it was hers. With that, she walked off. It was only then that Pete realized he had been deceived. During questioning by the audit team, they accused Pete of accepting a $1 billion bribe from a client. Pete denied it, but the auditors said his legal advisor, Rosie, had already testified against him. Pete finally understood Rosie was setting him up as the scapegoat, framing him for embezzlement. He tried to explain further, but the recording the audit team had completely crushed him. The recording contained Rosie's accusation that Pete had raped her. Rosie even claimed in the recording that Pete had been blackmailing her ever since. Pete couldn't believe it. His family was destroyed, and now he was facing a lawsuit. Enraged, he burst into Rosie's office, demanding to know why she was framing him. Rosie wanted nothing more to do with him and simply left, ignoring his frantic shouts. The next day, Rosie not only went to Pete's wife, telling her to control her husband, but also filed a police report, alleging that Pete had used his position to sexually assault her. When the company's management heard about this, fearing it would damage the corporate image, they pressured him to resign to salvage the company's reputation. By this point, Pete was utterly shattered. He had lost everything. He called his wife and told her the whole story. Hearing her husband's sobs and pleas through the phone, Lisa had a terrible premonition. She immediately drove to his company. She kept calling him on the way, but no one answered. By the time she rushed to the scene, her husband had already jumped from the building, landing with a sickening thud on the car roof right beside her. This was a top-tier matchmaking event among Chable families, where everyone wore expensive, mysterious masks. Just to gain entry as the lowest tier member cost an amount equivalent to an ordinary person's lifetime savings. Yet Lisa, who had recently lost her husband to suicide and gone bankrupt, surprisingly showed up at this ball. Her sole purpose in coming was to ruin the reputation of the woman dancing provocatively. Ever since her husband was driven to suicide by Irene, Lisa had been in a prolonged state of despair. To help her daughter snap out of it, Lisa's mother sold the family heirloom ring to enroll her in this exclusive matchmaking club. Not wanting her mother to waste the money, Lisa went to the club intending to cancel her membership. That's when she overheard Irene's name. Instantly filled with hatred, she spun around and shot, accidentally knocking over an expensive vase in the process. All eyes turned to her. After a brief moment of being stared at, Lisa was escorted to a VIP reception room. She asked her assigned coordinator about her enemy and learned that Irene was there looking for a new man. Lisa immediately abandoned her plan to quit. As she was leaving, Irene, who had been waiting, called out to her. Adopting the posture of a victor, she mocked Lisa, asking how she could already be looking for a new man so soon after her husband's death. Lisa retorted sarcastically that if trash like Irene could be there, why shouldn't she be? Enraged, Irene dredged up the past and shamelessly demanded an apology from Lisa. Lisa warned her that if she didn't want the club members to find out about her sordid history, she should stop provoking her. Then she turned and walked away. Lisa wanted revenge for her husband, but she had more pressing matters. To cope with yet another rent increase, she needed to find a job immediately. After searching extensively, she arranged a dinner meeting with a university department head. He promised her a part-time teaching position, but emboldened by alcohol, placed his hand on her thigh. Lisa promptly removed his hand and stepped outside to cool down. That's when she unexpectedly ran into her first love, Charlie. Meeting again after so many years, both seemed quite restrained. They exchanged a few brief pleasantries and parted ways. Before leaving, Charlie handed her his business card, telling her she could contact him if she ever needed help. In low spirits, Lisa took the card and left. Lisa assumed the job opportunity was lost, but the next day, the department head called her to his office. He not only apologized for his rudeness but also offered her a well-paying project to lead. Lisa gratefully thanked him, but the moment she saw the investor, she froze. Irene greeted her gracefully and bluntly told Lisa she hoped this gesture would buy her silence and prevent her from disrupting Irene's plans to marry into a wealthy family. Unmoved, Lisa went to find the club's founder, Susan, and asked her directly how one should take revenge on someone they hate. Susan replied, "Then fall in love with someone who can fulfill your desires." Just then, Irene appeared, interrupting their conversation. Observing the two women, Susan made an excuse and left. Realizing she couldn't win Susan over, Irene resorted to a more aggressive strategy. She went to Susan's office and handed her an envelope containing photos of herself with a famous celebrity Irene claimed to be his illegitimate daughter. She offered this information as a bargaining chip, asking Susan to arrange an opportunity for her, someone of unremarkable status, to compete with aristocratic ladies for for a chance at marrying into a wealthy family. This card proved effective. Susan called a meeting and announced a masquerade ball. 40 single men and women from wealthy families would be selected to freely mingle and find suitable partners at this event. Irene was pleased when she heard the news, confident in her own abilities. Little did she know, the women attending this ball were all equally cunning and ambitious. A group of socialites and wealthy elites passed through rigorous screening to enter the venue, then donned masks to conceal their identities. The premise was simple: find true love through the most basic principle of personal attraction. Only at the very end would they be required to reveal who they really were. However, some of the socialites had no intention of playing by the rules. Their target was Sean, a billionaire. Irene, having done her homework, already knew that the man in the gold mask, codenamed Zeus, was her mark. From the moment she stepped into the venue, she began scanning the room, searching for her target. When the man in the gold mask finally appeared, Irene confidently made her move, only to be momentarily blocked by a server carrying a tray of drinks. By the time she looked up again, someone else had already beaten her to it, another woman who was also breaking the rules. Susan, the founder, saw through everything. Quietly, she swapped the masks of Charlie and Sean. The real billionaire, Sean, ended up wearing a white mask as he entered the event. Irene, stunning in her red gown, quickly caught his attention and that of his friends. Encouraged by them, Sean approached her to strike up a conversation. Unaware of his true identity, Irene turned down the real billionaire without a second thought. Feeling deflated, Sean leaned against a table by himself. Jenny, who had been watching him closely, seized the opportunity. She approached him and gently led him toward the dance floor. She, too, was someone playing outside the rules. Susan had already filled her in on the mask swap and offered some guiding words. When someone used to being the center of attention suddenly finds themselves in a place where no one recognizes them, a gentle approach in that moment of uncertainty can leave a lasting impression. Susan, it became clear, was the one truly pulling the strings behind the scenes. As the evening reached its peak, the woman beside Charlie invited him to dance. He tried to refuse, but as they hesitated, Irene set down her glass and walked straight over. Taking Charlie by the arm, she pulled him onto the platform. Her gaze was hypnotic as she looked at him, her hands gliding over his body. She moved with fluid grace, pouring all her charm into the dance. Every man in the room was captivated. When the music ended, she deliberately pushed Charlie away and continued dancing alone on the stage. Unable to stand being upstaged, Jenny stepped forward and challenged Irene to a dance-off. Meanwhile, Lisa, who had been observing from the sidelines, noticed something shocking. The woman in red bore a tattoo on her shoulder identical to that of her enemy. Following her, Lisa confirmed Irene's true identity. Charlie, now alone after stepping away, ran into Sean. Intrigued by the popular Zeus, he struck up a conversation. The two quickly hit it off. Then Charlie's phone rang. Bored, Sean noticed Lisa and approached her. To his surprise, they found they had an unexpected rapport. Just as their conversation was gaining momentum, Charlie wandered over and joined in. Watching this unfold, Irene was furious. She marched straight up to Charlie and, with an air of intimacy, invited him to continue their talk. But in an awkward stumble, she fell to the floor. Both Sean and Charlie reached out a hand to help her up. Faced with two exceptional men offering their assistance, she hesitated, then, after a moment's pause, reached out and placed her hand in one of theirs. A woman went to great lengths to seduce a wealthy man, only to discover he wasn't rich at all. Ironically, the man she kept rejecting was the real billionaire she'd been after all along. Watching him walk away, she was filled with regret. Just moments earlier, it was time for the big reveal. Guided by the host, everyone at the masquerade removed their masks and introduced themselves. When Lisa stepped forward to reveal her identity, Irene was stunned. Lisa stared back at her with undisguised hatred. Just as she was about to tell the confused crowd how Irene had driven her husband to his death, she was interrupted. A divorced couple had coincidentally run into each other at the event, and their explosive argument suddenly stole everyone's attention. Seizing the opportunity, a guilt-ridden Irene slipped away in the chaos. The couple's fight escalated, sending guests screaming from the venue. Lisa never got the chance to expose Irene. Disheartened, she was about to leave when the event organizer stopped her and invited her to stop by the office for tea and a chat the next day. After the crowd had thinned out, Irene managed to corner the man in the gold mask. That's when she realized she'd been chasing the wrong target all along. Soon after, everyone who attended received a text message about the pairing process. They were to select their preferred partner, and the club would arrange a date based on the matches. The portly man had selected nearly every woman there, while Sean remained undecided. Meanwhile, Irene anxiously pressed the event coordinator for information. She desperately wanted to know which woman the billionaire Sean had chosen, but the coordinator didn't know either. She tried asking a supervisor, only to be seen through immediately by the sharp-eyed woman. Unable to get any concrete answers, Irene grew increasingly uneasy. The final match results were delivered to Susan's office. The much-coveted Sean had selected Lisa as his preferred partner. Coincidentally, Lisa had just arrived for her visit. She poured out the story of how Irene had destroyed her husband, demanding that Susan expel Irene from the club. But Susan, ever the businesswoman, refused to get involved. Seeing that her plea had gone nowhere, Lisa stormed out, only to run into Irene, who was just about to enter. Irene knew Lisa's complaint had been pointless and taunted her. No matter how much Lisa threatened or harassed her, the world would always side with Irene. Irene went to Susan and, once again, played her card as the illegitimate daughter of a senator. Offering to share information with council members in exchange, she demanded that Susan arrange an opportunity for her and Sean. Susan smiled knowingly. Later, she visited Sean at home and told him that his match with Lisa had fallen through, but that Irene was very interested in him. With Susan's gentle persuasion, Sean agreed to go on a date with Irene. Irene dressed to impress, but deliberately played it cool. She maintained a composed, almost indifferent demeanor during their conversation, which only stoked Sean's curiosity and made him want to know more. Irene knew then that she had already won more than half the battle. She slept with the billionaire. The next day, he gave her a diamond ring. She accepted it without a second thought, not realizing that this very act would cost her any chance